This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Talking about Alaska government throughout the weeks and months and the successes and failures. One of the great successes is the Department of Public Safety, and Governor Mike Dunleavy picked about the best choice you could for the current commissioner position, and that's Jim Cockrell, who has also been a colonel over the Alaska State Troopers. He joins us not just to check in with Alaskans and give an update on Department of Public Safety, but also because October is a big deal when it comes to domestic violence, and it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Of course, we hit those statistics, and not because of Department of Public Safety or lack of law enforcement, but because of sociological issues. We hit this per capita domestic violence rate higher than other states, and Commissioner Cockrell's trying to change that. Commissioner Cockrell, thanks for joining us. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Tom, and I appreciate the introduction, and very humbling, and it's a privilege to be on your show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are running. Let's look at the divisions here. Of course, the famed Alaska State Troopers, Alaska Wildlife Troopers, Fire and Life Safety, Commissioner's Office, Statewide Services, Admin Services. You have a pretty big budget as well. And off the top of your head, how many troopers do you have now? I know back in the day, there were quite a few, and then they were shaved down, and now you're trying to bring the number back up.
Yes, sir, and I don't want to forget our councils. We got the Council of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, which is housed in Juneau. We got the Violent Crimes Conservation Board, which is here in Anchorage. And we also got the Alaska Police Standards Council to essentially police the police. So to get to your specific question, currently we have 319 authorized Alaska State Trooper positions, 88 authorized Alaska Wildlife Troopers, and a total of just under, I'd say, around 900 employees providing public safety services around the state. As you know, we also do consult handgun permits. We do. We got the State Crime Lab really rocking it right now, doing sexual assault kits and DNA uploads into CODIS to potentially catch offenders that have committed crimes that we haven't been able to solve. So as a department, I think we're doing really well. We are, of course, still facing recruitment and retention issues with the department, especially in the state trooper ranks. We've got currently 44 vacancies, if you include the 11 we've got at the academy right now on the AST side, and I guess 6 or 7 vacancies on the wildlife side. So that's one of our big focuses too, is also recruiting more Alaska State Troopers. We would certainly like to recruit more from our home state, because we believe that the troopers that we recruit out of our state here in Alaska are certainly more attuned to our cultural differences. They have a tendency to stay a lot longer with the troopers, and just bring a lot more what I consider Alaska to our department. If you look at our current recruits, and they've made really good troopers, but certainly they got hurdles to climb when we bring them up from the lower 48 and bring them into our ranks. But they assimilate fairly quickly. But again, we'd still like to focus more on hiring Alaska residents for the very rewarding and important job.
The ethnic diversity and the gender diversity is something you should be proud of under your leadership. I noticed that there is a multicultural trooper contingency, and across the way, when you look at, for instance, Anchorage Police Department and Ken McCoy and ethnic diversity, he being chief of police and African American and doing a great job, and across the state, is that something you take pride in to really? I mean, the new recruit has to be capable and competent and exceptional, and that's the type of caliber the troopers hire. But are you proud of the fact that you have such diversity in ranks from villages and from other ethnicities than white male?
Well, I think as a department, I don't know that I can take credit for our diversity. As a department, we've always strived for that. I think it's real important that our department has the same makeup as the people in the state of Alaska, and I certainly think we got areas that we need to improve in that area. I still think we need to increase our number of women in the department, our number of Alaska Natives, because essentially, especially when we're talking about rural law enforcement, and we still need to improve in our African Americans too. So there's room for improvement. I am proud of the steps that we have taken, but again, there's room for improvement that we're certainly working on. Our recruitment section is working every day to try to meet those gaps. As a department in 2015 and 16, we had 328 trooper positions, and of course during the previous administration we lost 32 of those in 2 years, and so we're starting to climb back up with this current administration, back up to the numbers that we believe. We essentially believe that as a department, to provide the services that are required for this state, we should have a minimum of 415 troopers, and so we're at 319 authorized positions. So we still got a ways to go, and it's my intention is to continue to grow the department. I think we got a pretty vibrant budget production. We submitted our budget proposals, and I'm looking forward to it because I know that this administration will support some of our asks that we've asked, and that includes more trooper positions in Matsu Valley, an area that we're suffering, and we've got an area of the state the size of the state of West Virginia, and that's sometimes over 100,000 residents outside the city of Wasilla and Palmer, and sometimes we have 3 to 4 patrol troopers on duty at one time, and that's unacceptable. As an agency, we still respond to domestic violence with 1 trooper in many areas of the state. There's not another agency in this country that would send 1 trooper to a domestic violence, and we do that routinely, and it's not safe for the people that we're contacting, and it's certainly not safe for our troopers. So there's areas that we need to address, and we need the public to continue to support us the way they have. The Matsu Valley, again, has been great. The citizens there are supporting the troopers, and I'm certainly appreciative of that. I see we flew out to Tyonek yesterday. Again, they support the troopers. We want a little bit more trooper presence there. We've got a huge focus right now in rural Alaska because, as you know, as a state, we have suffered providing what I consider even adequate law enforcement in our villages out west, and we're rectifying that. We're going to move some investigators out for the first time in our YK Delta up out of Nome, Kotzebue. We've never put investigative units there, and we're going to dedicate a unit just to investigate serious crimes that happen out there. Because if you look at some of those villages, they have higher crime rates, substantially higher per population than the Matsu Valley, the city of Anchorage, and we need to address those, and we need to do it now, not continue to wait, push it off. We need to continue to grow our VPSO program. It's kind of suffered during those cuts, and we've got less than 50 now. Governor Parnell's, when he was the governor, his goal was 120. My goal, short-term goal, is to get us up to 100 VPSOs in the village, because VPSOs, they don't do just law enforcement. They do firefighting, search and rescue. They're sometimes a dog catcher. They do the ETT, so they do medical. So they're kind of a jack of all trade. Plus, they're super important for the troopers out there because they're our eyes and ears in the villages, and they'll pick the trooper up with a side-by-side or a four-wheeler or a snow machine to get them to a residence they have to go to either do an investigation or arrest somebody. Again, they'll hold a serious crime scene. If we have a sexual assault or homicide in a village, it's our VPSOs that hold that side crime scene till a trooper can arrive. And sometimes because of the weather, it can take us several several days to get there just because we can't. There's no way physically for us to get there. So they're an important part of our department, even though they're not state employees, they're not department employees, but we're still married and we still support that program.
They're huge. Yeah, the Village Public Safety Officer program, huge. I want the commissioner to consider, because he's had high kudos for his activities, APOA, Fraternal Order of Troopers, working with lawmakers. I think that's important, what you've done. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about this month, October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and what the troopers are doing to reduce those statistics. Next up, one more segment with Commissioner Jim Cockrell, the head of the Department of Public Safety, right here on the Tom Anderson Show.
This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
We're talking with Commissioner Jim Cockrell, the head honcho over the Department of Public Safety, which has a lot of divisions. The claim and fame, we know Alaska State Troopers and Alaska Wildlife Troopers, and of course the councils, as he alluded to early on, Alaska Police Standards Council, the Fire Standards Council, of course the Violent Crimes Compensation Board, and the big gun for this interview that we're highlighting, Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. That's a big deal. Before we get into October and a month referencing that problem, and the commissioner can talk about what he's doing to try to curb those numbers. Lots of kudos that you're out and about. Civic organizations, Commissioner, Alaska Peace Officers Association, FOAS, trying to work with lawmakers. We've had lawmakers call in over the past few days and compliment you and your department because of your integration with them and trying to get their opinion. Is that something that you and the governor decided to do concertedly, or do you just feel that it's important to connect with communities and associations so they have an update on what you're doing?
Well, I think, a good part of my job, and certainly discuss this with the governor, my boss, is, part of my job is to educate the public of what we're doing, outreach, and I have to be engaged, because I have to engage and know what our troopers and our employees are doing, and the only way to do that is actually going out and going into I'll say the villages, into the towns, meet with the Native associations like Town of Chiefs, which I recently did in Fairbanks, and it's down on the peninsula. So it's important, but it's also important for me to stay in touch with the troopers. So, I spend as much time, because I still feel like I'm a road trooper, even though I've taken this job, because I've worked my way up through the ranks. And what's really important for this department is the boots on the ground, and that's something, big part of my job is supporting my troopers out on the road.
Absolutely. And,
because if we support them, we give them the tools they need, give them the training they need. I mean, if you look at how our troopers interact with our public, there's not another police agency that have law enforcement officers interact the way our troopers do. And that's why our troopers can go to domestic violence by themselves, can be out in the pucker brush at a guide camp talking to 5 armed hunters who just wasted several caribou or moose, and one person go in there, do the investigation, get out of there without harm to them or to the people they're contacting. I mean, so you have to have that demeanor, you have to have that respect, and you have to treat them with dignity. And that's something I think our department does very well, and it's something that we focus at a leadership level, and we'll continue to do so even from the academy all the way up. Are we perfect? No, certainly not, but we've got means to deal with that when we're not doing what I think we should be doing. And I've totally appreciate the support the legislators have given me since I've taken this job. It's all been positive. I met with almost all 60 of them during my confirmation process, which was an ordeal that I didn't expect, but all of them were supportive, had great ideas, and again, part of my job is to engage the legislature, because essentially they pass the laws, they fund the department, and it's important. And when the governor interviewed me for this job, because I certainly wasn't seeking it, one of the things that I had to have a connection with the boss. I also had to agree with his values and what's important for this department. And the first thing that he brought out is he wants to reduce the number of sexual assaults in the state because it's staggering, our numbers. It's embarrassing. And the number of domestic violence in our state. And it's been a priority of the department. It's been a priority of mine since I've been with the department, and we want to continue to do that. I mean, as you know, we lead the nation in domestic violence offenses and sexual assaults, and we have for many, many years. And it seems like it goes on deaf ears. And at some point, enough is enough. And it's not only a law enforcement issue. I mean, certainly when we get called, we'll go investigate it. And the way we investigate cases went continue to grow, and but it's too late when you look at it. If we have a victim of sexual assault, victim of domestic violence, the time we go there, we arrest the offender to hold him accountable for his or her actions. It's too late. We've already got a victim. We've already got a victim in our system. We got a victim that will suffer for some cases for the rest of their lives, and they'll have mental health issues. They'll be more tend to have substance abuse issues with alcohol or drugs. There's just so many bad things that happen to a person that's victimized during domestic violence or growing up in that culture. We've got to end that cycle. If we don't end that cycle, we'll never get ahead of the power curve. And that's one of the things the department's focus on, is continue to increase our ability to investigate those offenses, provide education, and then provide good documentation to send to the Department of Law for they can prosecute them and hold the offenders accountable. I mean, if you look at the most recent victimization survey conducted in joint with CVSA and the University of Alaska Anchorage, over, I think, 57.5% of our Alaska women have been victimized by either domestic interpersonal violence, either by sexual assaulted or been a party of a domestic violence. That's staggering. Think about it. That's over half the women in Alaska has been victimized. And that's, I think, if you look, and our department, we investigated 3,100 cases of domestic violence. Just our department alone reported domestic violence in 2020. So you got to figure probably 50% of them are going unreported. So that's probably just our department in our area. There's probably over 7,000 cases of domestic violence, and that's got to end. And the community has to get together and say we're not going to tolerate that type of behavior. In most victims of domestic violence is women, so I'm going to stick with that, even though men get are victims. But however, so that's kind of where we're at, right? We need to turn the corner, and it needs to start at a younger age. And I know that we're looking at Breeze Law, and the school districts are starting to provide some of that training in our schools, and it's kind of like seat belts, don't drive when you're drunk, all those type of things. They got to grow up with that, and then when they get up to adults, they know what acceptable behavior is. And in this state, we've allowed it to happen since statehood. And again, our department plays a big role in it, but it's on the inside. Other than we do with CVSA, we do have prevention thing, which I think we funded them over $2 million to provide more prevention type programs. But even they,
and that matters, doesn't it, in terms of just more troopers? I know U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski has been a leader on this, and Governor Mike Dunleavy as well, and U.S. Senator Sullivan as well, and you're right up there alongside them. It's not just about more troopers or a message broadly. It's about getting into schools, and it's about a mindset early on. And you brought up great examples about drugs, about seat belts, about crime in general early on. Hitting, arguing is not acceptable, opposite sex, all the different dimensions of that and the rudiments. And I like the fact that you're connecting at that level, not purely just on man and woman power of your troopers, because having more troopers doesn't stop domestic violence, does it?
No, because usually domestic violence happens inside the home, and obviously we're not inside the home, nor do we want to be inside the home.
Sure.
So it goes, it's behind the scenes. So, it's easier for law enforcement to tackle property crimes and stuff like that because that's more out in the open. But we can't make a real difference inside the homes other than take the offender to jail. And then you got the whole cycle. You got a uniformed law enforcement officer and going into a residence and with the kids there crying, and they're trying to deal with that, trying to figure out what we're going to do with the kids if the female victim is injured, going to get her medical treatment. So you got the kids traumatized. We've got the husband, the intimate partner, usually male, in handcuffs with the kids there. So what kind of signal does that send to the kids? We call the police and they take daddy home.
No, it's
so again,
Commissioner. It's a big deal, and the fact that you and the governor and others calling October Domestic Violence Awareness Month is a big start, and your I think efforts are meaningful for sure. We'd love to get you back. Is that possible in coming months?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Commissioner Jim Cockrell. It's always a pleasure, head of the Department of Public Safety, working with the governor to reduce crime and work with the public. And you get an A+ from me. It's the Tom Anderson Show. Good morning. God bless.